following is a hockey podcast out of Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. It'll only consist of a lot of puck talk and even more BS, or in actual words, banter and satire. Enjoy, and as always, go Canucks go.
I have no idea how I did not get COVID back in 2020, okay? I knew about like 10 to 12 people who got COVID. In fact, 4 of those people worked in our studios, but here I was not getting COVID, and I think it's because I believe in that 420 magic, man, for real, okay? All natural herbs every day protecting me. Beggsy, did you get COVID back in the day?
Not in 2020, my man. And yeah, maybe there's some green immunity going on, but I like to think that the alcohol I was drinking during the Canucks 2020 playoff bubble run was killing those germs, baby. We're going to talk about that today on Locked On Canucks.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks, and also a part-time credentialed media member for Daily Hive Vancouver. Before we dive into today's episode, we got to thank you for tuning in to Locked On Canucks, because it is your Canucks every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and if you haven't done so already, make sure you go subscribe or follow us for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I also got to let you know that we got a contest ready, okay? You want to win 2 tickets to see the Canucks play on Monday, March 25th against the LA Kings. You got to do 2 things. You either got to subscribe to the YouTube channel or leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, because we need a boost there, man. Some people are hating on us. So leave us a 5-star review there or subscribe to the channel. And then you got to subscribe to Kyle's Discord. The link is in the bio. Lots of Canucks talk going on there. And again, before we get into today's episode, I got to let you know that we're brought to you by Sleeper. Download that Sleeper app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. The year 2020, I think, seems like a fever dream to a lot of people. I'm not going to lie, I had a pretty great 2020. And the Canucks had a good 2022, right? In terms of, the world shut down, but they went on this magical playoff run that, no one got to witness. Did it even happen, man? We're here to take some lessons away from that run, look back on that magical run, and talk about, what the Canucks can learn moving forward. And maybe we'll share a bit about where we were in 2020. Were we even friends? Who knows? We'll get into it in a couple of minutes. Before we dive into the episode, let me introduce my co-host, someone who never got COVID. Unbelievable, man. Kyle Bhawan. How's it going, brother?
Never got COVID. That's because of, again, the herbs and the curry, dude. And the curry and the attitude, okay? Speaking of the attitude, remember when Ryan yesterday told us he was sick? He was sick, and he was also telling the people to go for a walk and to put it out in the universe that the Canucks are going to win the Stanley Cup. And then we told Ryan, you know what? Don't just think about us. Think about yourself. Go for a walk and tell Mother Nature to heal you from your illness. And look what Ryan said, man. It worked. I manifested my health being at 100%. I'm telling you, bro. I'm telling you, a big reason why I think I didn't get COVID as well is because I did go for those walks, and I just kept telling myself, I'm not going to get sick. I'm not going to get sick. I'm not going to get sick. There is a lot of power in, positivity seems a little, corny sometimes to say, but just that belief, man, just that belief. It's crazy to say that, again, the belief can boost up your immune system. Sounds crazy, but it's the truth, man. Human beings are pretty powerful, man. How do we build the pyramids? Exactly, bro. Anyways, Kyle Bhawan, Trevor Beggs doing this, talking about your Canucks. Not a lot of game action happening in recent history. So what we're going to do today is kind of go back into history and talk about 2020, because it's March of 2024. 4 years ago, pretty much to this date, the world was kind of weird and it got shut down and your Canucks season stopped. And correct me if I'm wrong, that team that was growing and striving at this time was actually kind of faltering their way out of a playoff spot. I remember working out at Club 16. Trevor Linden Club 16, and I was watching it might have been one of the last games. I don't know if it was against the Islanders or against the Columbus Blue Jackets in Columbus, and we blew this lead and whatnot. And again, I was looking at the standings. We were fighting for a playoff spot, but something in my mind was telling me that this inexperienced team led by Travis Green wasn't going to get the job done. Thankfully, the season ended, and based on point percentage, we were able to enter the dance, and it was a fun time, yo. It was a fun time to see blue and green in the quote-unquote playoffs, right? The bubble playoffs. But more notably, it was a really fun time for my mind and my imagination to see Pettersson and Hughes at that age be playoff performers.
Yeah, and I think what we saw from them 4 years ago now, which feels wild. I think I've aged about 12 years in the last 4 years. But what we saw from Pedersen and Hughes in those playoffs really teased their potential that they could not just be fun, talented players, but elite MVP caliber
Mm.
players in this league.
Ooh.
And no, it hasn't been a straight road to get there, obviously, because the Canucks haven't been to the playoffs since then. But I think we saw flashes of that early on. Like I think of again Pedersen, the reverse hit on Ryan Hartman, just thinking like, man, can this guy actually hit like that? I think of
Mhm.
Quinn Hughes with the guy all over him making that outlet pass to Bo Horvat in Game 2 of overtime against the St. Louis Blues, where the Canucks took a 2-0 series lead over the defending champs. There were moments in those playoffs from this core that showed promise that they could do something big in the future. And obviously we all had our hopes up going into the North Division season, and they fell flat, and then they fell flat again, and then they fell flat again. So it's
Mhm.
been a long time coming for this core. But I think for me, Kyle, who impressed you the most from the 2020 playoffs? And I wonder if it'll be the same again. I mean, I think Patterson and Hughes are both strong candidates. Miller was pretty good in those playoffs as well. But then obviously Bubble Demko was
Mhm.
the story of the Canucks in those playoffs,
Mhm.
almost single-handedly helping the Canucks come back and defeat the Vegas Golden Knights. Who impressed you the most in those playoffs, and will that history repeat itself there?
I think the history will repeat itself, and I spent a lot of time talking about Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson again, picking up points, being elite players on the Canucks. I feel as if them being able to translate that into playoff execution, it was pretty rare for again, being a Canucks fan. We spent a lot of time seeing Naslund not be able to do that. We spent a lot of time waiting for Henrik and Daniel to do that. Straight up, straight up. And in year one, those two young guys did it ASAP. But that being said, bro, Thatcher Demko and that performance against Vegas still goes down to me as one of the greatest athletic performances I've seen in my life across sports. Because he did it for a stretch of games, and he was like 98 overall for that stretch of games. Dude, even up until the third period of game 7, you know what I'm saying? We were right there on the cusp of entering the final 4 with that core with Jay Beagle playing minutes for your Vancouver Canucks. You know what I'm saying? But what Bubble Demko did proved to me that this guy's poised, calm, cool, collected. The moment is not too big. I feel as if he can translate that into, again, this season in the moment. And we've been bringing this up, day in and day out, right? How I keep bringing up how this team's a little inexperienced. And I know Ryan had a comment, a good one. We'll get to that at the end of this segment regarding the experience of the Vancouver Canucks in the playoffs and in big games. But yeah, this team lacks that. And I think there's going to be moments in the playoffs because of that where the moment may feel a little bit too big for the players, but there's Thatcher Demko allowing this team to find it and not ultimately lose all of it. You get what I'm saying? Because when you have that type of backbone and that type of stability and that type of player that can ultimately get into the other team's head, it just allows, again, room and a path for the team and Rick Tocchet to get their ish together. Thatcher Demko, I'm not going to say he's a one-of-a-kind goalie, but he's definitely near the top tier of the best of the best. And I think he's going to be able to translate that into some, like Andre, how do you say his last name? Vasilevsky type of energy in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it's funny, right? Kyle mentioned being a 98 overall. I think I remember the number still. He had a .985 save percentage, stopped 98.5% of his shots in that series against the Vegas
Holy,
Golden Knights.
dude.
I mean, it was remarkable stuff.
What the
Uh,
what?
I'm gonna ask you this because I love these what if
What do you mean?
scenarios.
Okay, sorry, can I cut you off? Because I'm going back in time,
Yeah,
right? Again, the one downside from being a 420 activist is sometimes you suffer from memory loss. Okay, so did he play all 7 games in that series?
no, he
It what?
hopped in. I think he hopped in Game 4 and then played the last 3 games.
And
He definitely played He started the last 3 games.
how many shots did he face in that series? Because
Oh my
98.5%
god.
save percentage is ridiculous. Because I'm thinking in those 3.5 games that he did play, he faced almost 400, not 400, 200 shots.
He stopped 128 of the 130 shots that he faced in that series, which is unreal stuff.
Wait,
Yeah, he was on another planet. He was on another
what?
planet, man. And I mean, maybe NHL hockey was being played on another planet. I don't know. I wasn't in Edmonton of 2020. Maybe this was just played on Mars for all we know. Kind of felt that way, to be honest, just with no fans in the stands, playoff hockey in August. It definitely felt like a fever dream. Now, Kyle, I will ask you this because I love these what if scenarios. does Thatcher Demko stay a Canuck if he doesn't play playoff games?
I know.
Do the Canucks choose Demko over Markstrom if Markstrom
No.
plays the entirety of the 2020 playoffs?
No, they don't. Because remember, man, that was Jacob Markstrom's year. Like the ultimate year for Jacob Markstrom. He was so good that whole season. The backbone for that team. And without Demko given that responsibility, thus not having a time and place to display what he could do when the pressure's on, I don't think that management group and Aquilini would be able to take one of the biggest pieces out of that core in the dressing room. They'd find a way to keep him. And remember, do the math. Because a lot of people seem to think that the Canucks had no money that offseason. The same team signed Braden Holtby for quite a bit of money. They would have kept Jacob Markstrom. Okay? Straight up.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, but one of the things I do think about is that, Markstrom was obviously acquired by Gillis and Demko was a Benning draft pick. But, I don't know if Benning would have had, the brass balls that this management team has. And it would have taken some brass balls to choose Demko over Markstrom when Markstrom played the entirety of the playoffs. Now, you talked about experience a bit, and I want to touch on that because experience does matter going into the playoffs. But we saw it in 2020, and again, different atmosphere completely. I think, for the St. Louis Blues, it's pretty hard to defend your Stanley Cup title in a bubble on Mars. But you look at the Canucks, and they had some experience. Like they had Sutter, and they had Beagle, and they had Roussel, and they had these guys, these character guys that could help lead the young core, and they were awful. They were awful in those playoffs. Like we remember the good from the run. The Canucks almost made it to the Stanley Cup or the conference finals. But like Beagle, Roussel played all 17 games of the playoffs in 2020. He averaged just over 7 minutes a night. Okay. Yeah. You had Adam Gaudette with 0 points in 10 games playing, just over 10 minutes a night. Jake Virtanen had 3 points in 16 games, right?
Holy.
Brandon Sutter had 1 goal in 17 games. There was a lot of garbage on that roster, for lack of a better term, I'll even throw, do you remember Oscar Fanenberg? Oscar Fanenberg played 16 of 17 games for the Canucks in those playoffs, right? So, you're talking about a team that was heavily flawed. And I think, we'll get to it on the other side, but, there are some lessons from 2020 that the Canucks can take away. Some good things for sure, I think, in terms of how the star players played. But overall, some lessons and some optimism that these Canucks can do so much more.
Yeah, man. Well, that's what hope does, man. It's that feeling, man. It's like what you ask for as a sports fan. And sometimes that hope does lead to a lot of delusion. And, some of those faces were still on that Canadian division team. And here I was thinking that they were the best team in Canada. Again, a lot of that had to do with me believing that their best players were top tier talent. And they still are, Quinn Hughes and Pettersson. And you can argue JT Miller now is taking the next step in his game. They're some of the best players in hockey. But at the end of the day, it was pretty obvious that A, that depth wasn't good enough. And B, again, if the season were to continue in March of 2020, the Canucks were faltering. And I think a big reason why they would have missed the playoffs is exactly what you just referred to. Their depth pieces were absolute trash. Absolute trash. This time around, you fast forward to 2024, you want to talk about delivering on that 2020 vision, that 2020 promise. A lot of me believing that this team can bypass the fact that they may not have a lot of playoff experiences because I look at this roster and I feel as if a lot of these players can hold up their own. And in separate regards, outside of being a Vancouver Canuck, there are a lot of faces here that have a ton of playoff experience.
Yeah, 100%, right? So more reasons for optimism. On the other side, I want to throw in, the Professor Beggsy, Professor Bhawan caps, and let's talk about the biggest lessons these Canucks can learn from 2020. Before we get to that, let's shout out a beloved sponsor, and today that beloved sponsor is Sleeper. All right, Canucks fans, we're in the stretch drive. Okay, 14 games to go? 14 games to go until playoff hockey returns to Rogers Arena for the first time in 9 long years. Let's go, baby. Okay, that's an exciting proposition right there. But here's another exciting proposition for you. Go win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey. Because with Sleeper, you could win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether studs like JT Miller, Elias Pettersson, or Brock Besser will record more or less in their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more in a given game. To win a 100 times bet on sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Canucks fans. So you can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability.
Man, we're going to have a lot of fun tonight in Vancouver, all my real fans.
Okay, we back talking about your Vancouver Canucks here on Locked On Canucks. Hit the like button and the subscribe button. It really does help us out a lot. And again, if you are enjoying us on the podcast side, dude, leave us a 5-star review, okay? The haters, I don't mind the haters. You know, for real, to each their own, right? It is what it is. But they're taking over, man. They're really not liking the voice. And I think because of that, Trevor is suffering, man. Straight up, man. I'm holding Trevor back from having a more higher rated podcast on the audio side. Straight up. I think I got a comment here. Okay, look at this. This is a great comment. I have pretty low standards, but not this low. Yikes. And this was a comment left by Zofia on Apple Podcasts. Gave us a 1-star. Trevor, man, it is what it is. And look at this review, okay? This came on the YouTube side. Holy ish. Oh, I'm not even allowed to say this. My bad, YouTube side. This guy said, holy ish. This guy has the voice of a dude who absorbs helium. Okay? Unlistenable. He also said it's unfortunate and it's a bummer that he can't listen to me talk about the Canucks. Hey, it is what it is. If you guys go to the last video and see that comment, I'll go pin it. Remember, go reply to it and tell that person that at least Kyle's girlfriend is hot, okay? That does a lot for me. For real. It's my girlfriend's birthday's coming up in a couple months. I would love to make her a card and fill it up with Kyle's girlfriend is hot memorabilia inside the card. Anyways, Kyle Bauer and Trevor Beggs talking about the past, man. Boom, bam. Lessons we learned from the past. And I think this has a lot to do with depth. Am I correct, Trevor? Because you referred to it earlier. The depth was trash on the Vancouver Canucks in 2020. You turn it around now, or you look forward to the now, and it's completely different. Do you think that's like one of the number one lessons Francesco Aquilini learned about, what was needed in 2020 and forward?
Man, something happened during that COVID break. I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you. Something happened. Because the depth pieces, they were good. They were good before the COVID stretch hit, right? Adam Gaudette was tearing it up. Jake Virtanen was having a career season. We were all super bullish on these guys. Like, oh, look at these guys on the third line. They're scoring.
Those guys were trash, man. Those guys were trash.
You were not saying that in 2020. I was not saying that in 2020.
No,
right?
I was. Bro, come on, man. Remember everyone was shotgun Jake Virtanen. What did I say? I was like, I'm not doing this unless this guy scores 20 goals. I put
that's true. You did say
everyone
that.
was jumping on the wagon, and I was like, this guy's trash, bro. I'm only gonna do it if this guy scores 20 goals. And what happened, bro? This guy scored 3 goals in 16 playoff games, and Jim Benning was like, yo, dude, Tyler Toffoli, we don't need Tyler Toffoli. Oh, extending Pettersson for 8 years? No, let's give him a bridge contract and save some money so we can sign Jake Virtanen to a multi-million-dollar contract. Come on, don't put that. Dude, I knew Jake Virtanen sucked, bro.
You did say that. You did say that. I'll give you credit on that. I forgot that you were going on the shotgun Jake strike until he hit.
Dude, exactly, bro. Because he sucked, bro. They had unintelligent players, bro. They had players that didn't want to work hard. That team was just led, I think, first and foremost by Jacob Markstrom. He was unreal that year. Keep in mind, too, Jacob Markstrom, if I'm correct, this is a sensitive topic, but he was on a mission. I think his father passed away that year, too. And he was just doing the most to make sure that he could put himself, because he worked so hard to be a high regard goaltender, to live up to his potential. And his journey to get to where he got to and where he is now is remarkable. Because there was a point where Jacob Markstrom was maybe the worst goaltender in hockey. For real. Remember, it wasn't that long ago, before the bubble playoffs, before Markstrom became Markstrom, where the Canucks put him on waivers.
Yeah.
Okay, so we had Markstrom, Pettersson, Hughes doing their thing. JT Miller was unreal that season. But all in all, man, the supporting cast was trash, bro. Adam Gaudette, come on, man. Come on, bro.
Yeah, my point was that people were very bullish on him at the time, right? And at the time, it was like, what, 33 points in 55 games with a shutdown. It's like, okay, here's this guy we drafted in the 5th round. It was a feel-good story, you know? People were coming around on Jake Virtanen, and I'll get, like I said, I'll give you the foresight. You definitely were not jumping on the Jake Virtanen bandwagon at the time. But yeah, to bring it back to your point, you know, these Canucks in 2024 on paper have a lot better depth. Like even I did a piece about this on Daily Hive that went live today. But like looking at the depth pieces from 2011 compared to now, compared to right now in 2024, like there's some parallels you can draw. Like you look at those 2011 Canucks and they had, you know, Mason Raymond, Chris Higgins, Alex Burrows were guys who can, you know, elevate into the top 6. And on these Canucks, it's the same thing. Like you have Nils Höglander, you have Pius Suter, you have Connor Garland. Those are all guys who can credibly play in your top 6 who aren't necessarily star players. So you got to have the depth. I think the Canucks right now, obviously, the guys I had mentioned, like Teddy Bluger, Dakota Joshua, you know, the guys like that are making impacts as well. So the Canucks are right. We're mainly carried by stars. And I think another lesson here that really applies to these Canucks, and I think we start to see this change of late, was that they need to create their own luck a bit more. Those Canucks in the 2020 bubble playoffs were pretty much outshot every single game. Even in the St. Louis series, they were outshot pretty much every single game.
Yeah.
And, you know, you look at the Canucks this year, and it's similar to 2020 in the sense that, you know, in 2020, they had a high percentage of finishing, same to now. They didn't shoot much, same to now. They relied on great goaltending, which is the same to now, right? So these are lessons that I'm thinking about 4 years later saying, like, please, like, Canucks, create your own chances, create your own opportunities. And again, to their credit, they've done that more so, at least over the past couple of games, although it hasn't been that way throughout the season.
Yeah, true. I mean, like, remember October, November, December, PDO, right? PDO. That was a thing. The Canucks just capitalizing on, like, scoring 4 goals on 18 shots every game, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, in recent history, the Canucks, I think, are finding their identity, and they're playing a playoff brand of hockey. They really are. And, you know, 4 or 5 weeks ago, I don't know if I brought this up on air, but I was questioning, like, what this team's identity is. What is it? Like, how are they going to beat you? And I'm so happy that they are showcasing this style of play. And it's not the sexiest style of play. It really isn't. It really isn't. When you really, like, look into it, but for them to showcase a level of tenacity, a level of compete, a level of battle, shows that they're taking this really, 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 really serious. And it goes back to a player like Brock Besser. Straight up, core member of this team. You go look at the Brock Besser tape from the last 3 games. I think this guy has maybe like 1 point in those 3 games. I don't know what the math is. But those are some of the most impressive Brock Besser games I've seen ever. And, bro, to be honest, he might be the X factor going into the playoffs this season. Just having one more guy like that who is really good offensively too, being able to apply a work rate like that, it bodes well for the rest of the team. And it establishes that culture that, yo, this is how we're going to get the job done. We got to work hard like this. And again, they're playing a playoff brand of hockey. They're battling along the boards. They're winning puck battles. They're doing the right things. And ultimately, to Trevor's point, I think that's a recipe for them to take initiative and create their own chances. Straight up.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned the name Brock Besser too, because, you know, that was a guy in the 2020 playoffs who played a lot, almost 19 minutes a game, but only 4 goals, 11 points in 17 games. Like he wasn't the one stealing the show like Pettersson, Hughes, Miller, and Horvat did as well, along with the Canucks goaltenders. So I think that was a good experience for Brock. Obviously, Brock has been through a ton in 4 years since then. But yeah, Kyle, I agree. That's a guy who you really want him to step up in these playoffs. So I think the depth's better, but they need to create more of their own luck. I think those are kind of my main 2 takeaways for what the Canucks from 2020 can learn in 2024.
Yeah. And even if they don't, bro, Canucks fans watching this, man, hit the like button for this comment right here. Even if they don't establish their own luck driving ability in spurts in the playoffs, they have Thatcher Demko. And that is the biggest X factor of this team. It's like back in the day, we saw guys like Halak steal a series for the Canadians, right? Blah, blah, blah. That Canadians team just full of depth. And this guy just stealing them a series. I look at the Canucks and I'm like, yo, they're full of depth. They have a lot of star players. There's a recipe there for them to have success. But this whole Thatcher Demko thing is is the reason why I think June is a big possibility for a team that, again, doesn't have a lot of playoff experience. Now, I was going to bring this up, Trevor. I want you to give me your honest answer because, we only have a 30-minute program here. Sometimes, we can't go back and forth for too long. But do you think that playoff experience, as Ryan is referring to in 2020, was real? Because Ryan thinks it is. Now, that bubble playoffs, again, I use it a lot in quotations. Again, thus making me say that, that wasn't really real. Do you think that playoff experience was, again, real? Those games played were real? Because, again, no one in the crowd, the feeling's different, not intimidating. Continue.
Yeah, it's real, but it's a little different for sure, right? Like when you have, fans booing you and against you and, fans, 20,000 people screaming for the home team, whether you're at home or on the road, like that stuff does make a difference, right? Even if you think about playing ball hockey in front of like no one or playing in front of friends and family, like you do feel a little bit different, right? So, but yeah, don't get me wrong, that experience does matter. Like those are intense games. These guys are competitive beings that are still trying to win hockey's greatest prize, right? So, that experience does matter, and I think it made them hungrier, knowing what those games felt like because those games were intense. Like it was still good hockey. Again, just feels different when there's no fans there, but it was still good hockey. That experience does mean something for those Canucks, and that matters more so to the Stars. But to wrap up the show, I want to talk about who are candidates for the potential Tater Tot Mott, aka Tyler Mott of 2024, is going to be for your Vancouver Canucks. Before we do that and wrap up the show, I got to shout out eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts to choose from for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash, baby. With all the parts you need, the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
People, we back talking about your Vancouver Canucks, and we got to let you know again, okay? The Discord. Yes, the Discord. The link to that is available in the bio below. Join it. Have fun talking to other Canucks fans, just other fans of whatever we're making out of the Don't Doze Art Lab. We talk a lot of music. We talk a lot of books. We talk a lot of life. Again, join the Discord and also enter for a chance to win 2 tickets to a Canucks game on March the 25th. We'll announce the winner on March the 22nd. We had one person talk about how that may be too short of a notice for people to win the tickets and then make their way to Vancouver. It is what it is. It's our first time doing this, bro. Don't worry. We're growing, though. We're growing. Maybe down the road, we're going to give away some tickets and an all-exclusive stay at in Vancouver at the, Holiday Inn. Okay? Straight up. Anyways, Kyle Bhawan, Trevor Beggs. Doing this, talking about the Canucks. Trevor Beggs does have to go in a couple of minutes. When he does go, I'll stick around and answer a lot of the questions and talk to the people via the comments. Beggsy, you want to talk about the next Tater Tot Mott? I can't believe I just said that name out loud. I forgot about that whole regime, okay? Straight up. Tater Tot Mott, who is going to be that unsung hero this time around in the playoffs for your Canucks? I'll let you go first, and then I'll answer.
Yeah, I've struggled with this one because I think there's a couple obvious candidates, but I kind of want to go off the board, and I'm going to say Sam Lafferty. I think he's someone who a lot of Canuck fans have forgotten about. But this is a guy who, again, has been in the playoffs, has been in that Pittsburgh organization, who knows winning, one of those veterans who knows how to perform. And I do think that Sam Lafferty could be quiet here for the next 6 weeks. We could kind of forget he plays for the Canucks, and then boom, he's scoring in like the last minute of Game 6 or something like that. So I'm going to go with Sam Lafferty for my potential unsung hero. But he's got to bring it more than that because Tater Tot Mott, again, that was what we called it on the old show, so I'm sticking with it. He brought it through that whole series against the Blues. So yeah, you got to see something similar from Sam Lafferty if he's going to get there, but want to give a bit of the off the board answer here. And I think he's got it in him. Like he's got the speed, he's got the experience. He got gone quiet after a really hot start.
Yeah, dude, and he's going to have a lot to play for too, and that's another contract, man. I feel like he might be at a point in his career where he's tired of bouncing around so many different places. He's been on 4 different teams in the last No, 3 different teams in the last 12 months, maybe 4 different teams in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And he has a lot of work to do to, again, establish his role as an NHL player. I'm going to go ahead and say this, and this is not the most surprising of answers, or maybe it's not an answer as, I don't know, like mysterious as the one you just gave because of his top 6 placement on the team, but it's Niels Höglander. Like, it really is. I think he's about to put himself on the map, and, not to like always bring up the money and the contracts and all that jazz, because it's really about the moment. But, considering the fact that he has, 13 months left on that deal, 14 months left on that deal when the playoffs come around, I think he has a lot to play for as well. And that's establishing himself as a household name in the NHL.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a good answer. I do consider Niels Höglander more of a top 6 piece
No,
now, man.
I know.
He made it
I
after
know.
pushing it all this time. But another guy I did think of was Carson Soucy, and one of the reasons I thought of it is because Troy Stecher was a bit of an unsung hero too, right? Easy to remember. The Canucks top 4 of those bubble playoffs were Quinn Hughes, Kristanov, and then Edler and Myers. So times have changed since then. Now Soucy might be in the top 4. But yeah, it's Stecher in those bubble playoffs with 2 game-winning goals. He scored twice, but they were both game winners.
Wow.
I think we all liked a lot of what he brought in those bubble playoffs, even though, he wasn't a Canuck long-term after that. But I could see Carson Soucy kind of stepping up. Very different player than Stecher, but I could see him stepping up in a big way once the playoffs roll around as well.
There you go. Okay, I like that. I like that answer, man. I'm a huge Carson Soucy fan, and if you missed it, we did talk about Carson Soucy being the steal. Yes, the steal of the offseason last season on the last episode of Locked On Canucks. Again, I'm going to pin a comment there, man. A comment that was hating on my voice. And if you guys can leave a reply to that saying that, his voice sucks, but at least his girlfriend is hot, that would really mean a lot to me. Anyway,
Your
Trevor,
voice doesn't suck, though, man. It doesn't suck. Dude, you got one of my favorite voices of all time.
Dude, okay. I know my voice doesn't suck. I'm just, just going along with the joke, man. I'm not, dude, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
It is what it is.
Right,
If people are going to say that, I'm cool with it. I'm 30 and a half years old, man. Okay? Straight up. I guarantee some white hairs are about to grow on my head pretty soon. I'm old. I can take the heat, It is what it is. But I want to let that guy know that you may think you're hurting me, but you can't hurt me if my girlfriend is hot. And she's really hot. So I'm Gucci, man. Okay, I know Trevor Beggs got to go. I'm going to reply to the comments, and then we'll get out of here. Beggsy, thanks for your time. One love. Take care. And, as always, go Canucks, go.
Go Canucks, go. See y'all tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Peace, peace, peace. Okay, people. I'll stick around for a couple more minutes. We'll answer some questions, okay? For real. Also got to shout out the Don't Doze Art Lab for supplying the space for us to produce this show. If you don't know what the Don't Doze Art Lab is, we talk a lot about it. In retrospect, in the Discord, they're just a place, a facility, a collective that really, really cares about the West Coast, okay? For real. I've said this many times, man. You got to look after your neighbors before you take care of the world. Straight up. Anyways, let's get to some of these comments, okay? We're talking about the playoffs, and if we're going to talk about the playoffs in Vancouver, this stuff is always going to come up, right? Look at Zarfi. Thanks for the comment, okay? I hate the Canucks haters, and I hate the people he used the riots to make us look like Vancouver Canucks fans are crazy. Look, man, I think all that noise about Canucks fans being quote-unquote rioters and some of the worst fans in the league is somewhat warranted. And I know that sounds crazy for me to say because, again, I'm always looking out for us. I'm West Coast first, right? But at the end of the day, this city has done it twice. And that's acted like idiots. Idiots. Post Stanley Cup Finals. And when you do it twice, that's not just staying power. That's identity. Straight up. Let me know in the comments below if you've gotten this far, okay? Do you think the city of Vancouver deserves watch parties? Live watch parties with thousands of people on the streets after, again, 2 instances where a lot of damage was put out. Straight up. Zarfi with another comment. I want to see Lekaramaki on a line with Pettersson and Höglander. Bro, could that happen as early as next season? You know what I'm saying? Could it happen as early as next season? Maybe. Another comment. Now we have to see what my girlfriend looks like. Yo, dude, come on, man. Just picture a hot girl, okay? A beautiful girl. That's who she is. One love to my girl. Straight up, straight up. We had another comment talking about Talking about this right here. Okay, Popeye Sailor. If you don't know who Popeye Sailor is, I'm pretty sure this guy's had a long history in leadership. He's had a long life and experienced life, and he's talking about how he wishes Tocchet would take his players to the top drum corp practice and see how dedicated they are. Bobby Knight, I think he's like an old school basketball coach, took his players to watch Star of Indiana, and the players were amazed. Dude, I wonder what type of recipe Tocchet is using as a way to be philosophical / a coach with the Vancouver Canucks, because this team, albeit maybe like one instance this season, has been really, really resilient. I wonder, yo. I wonder what type of philosophy he's adding to the mix, man, because he's done a great job. That staff has done a great job. I wonder how much of the leadership / being able to become resilient on the fly has to do with not only Tocchet, but Quinn Hughes. Straight up. Loving this team. Look at Elston, man. I remember being in 2011 and seeing cars get flipped over. I was so devastated walking home in slow motion. Imagine losing in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final 4-0 and you're seeing your city burn down. It was embarrassing, man. In fact, I'm not going to say I'm like grateful for that moment, but back in the day, I was such a sensitive Canucks fan, like a super, super sensitive Canucks fan. Losses would just hurt me. They still kind of do. With all that being said, losing Game 7 and then seeing what was happening to the city was somewhat of a distraction to exactly what happened. And that's, again, the Canucks being dominated Game 7 on home ice in the Stanley Cup Final. Weird times. Anyways, G. Ellis, Rick Tocchet is a workhorse himself and expects the same. No days off, no shifts off. That's the establishment. That's the culture. And, we brought up Brock Besser earlier today on the episode. Bro, when you see a guy like Brock Besser working like that and changing his play style to ultimately be more effective without the puck, it trickles down. When you see Quinn Hughes battling the way he's been battling in recent history, it does the exact same thing. We've seen it from Patterson too, a highly skilled player, a player that doesn't have to lay the body, doesn't have to engage physically to be effective. Do that, though, it trickles down. It really does. The culture, man. Rick Tocchet, Coach of the Year. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Doing the most. Richard, I always knew Demko was the way to go. Youth always wins for me. We'll end it on this comment right here. I mean, again, going back to 2020, what we're doing on today's episode, Markstrom was really good that whole season. And if it's not for a Markstrom injury in the playoffs, Demko doesn't get that run and ultimately allow management to pick him over Markstrom. It's bizarre how that goes, man. It really is. And at the time, it looked like a really, really great decision. But it's hard for me to, not think about where that Canadian division year could have gone if they did also keep Markstrom and use, still a 2-goalie system, similar to Ullmark and Swayman in Boston at that time around. And remember, they tried to do that with Holtby. They spent money on Braden Holtby. Ridiculous, yo. Something else. When they moved off of Markstrom, it wasn't just to make Demko the, primetime number 1 goaltender. That wasn't in the cards. It wasn't. They still wanted a cushion. Braden Holtby was the opening day starter for your Vancouver Canucks that season. What? Jim Benning sucked, yo. Jim Benning sucked, man. Unreal. Do we have to end on that note? I think so. Okay, my name's Kyle Bhawan. One love to you and you and you and you. Again, we're giving away Canucks tickets on March the 22nd. Join the Discord. One love to the people. We really are doing our best to establish a community here and, spread love, man. It's all about spreading love and cheering for the Vancouver Canucks because no other teams matters, okay? For real. One love to the Locked On Podcast Network, establishing that culture, right? Your team every day. We tell them, we're not saying that. We're telling them, we're saying your Canucks every day because, again, teams don't matter other than the Vancouver Canucks. I got to go. My name's Kyle Bhawan. One love to Trevor Beggs. One love to our sponsors. Subscribe, hit the like button, and have a good morning, a good afternoon, a good night. We don't know when you're watching this, if you're not watching this live or listening to this, but hey, we really do appreciate it. One love, go Canucks, go. And peace.
Your Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast